Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Kitchen Table Series. It's lunchtime. I have my lunch. I got a little iced tea. Why don't you pick your lunch up, bring it over to the kitchen table, and have a conversation with the resident company members at Everyman Theater. Welcome to the Kitchen Table Series. It's a lunchtime conversation, and for today, we're going to do some interviews and conversations with our exciting associate artistic directors. This series will have interviews and conversations that'll last about 30 minutes long. You can watch them on your break. You can eat a sandwich, or you can catch them on our website if you can't be here for lunch. This is going to eventually air every other Thursday at noon. For the first episode, we'll focus on artistic leadership here at Everyman. It's a unique setup. We have a trio of artistic directors. There's me as the founder and artistic director, and I have not one, but two associate artistic directors, Paige Hernandez and Noah Himmelstein. Now, we've just recently announced the addition of Paige Hernandez, and we're very excited about her addition to the trio. And these are both extraordinary artists. And what makes them different than other theaters that may have more than one associate artistic director is that these two have vibrant freelance careers, and I've selected them because I want them to continue on in their freelance jobs, working all over the country. And then they split their time between that work and being at Everyman, bringing best practices back to the theater and, spreading the word about Everyman in their journeys. So they are encouraged to continue their exciting work. Both are focused on new play development. Both are from Baltimore. One lives in and works in New York when not in Everyman, and the other works nationally and internationally as a multidisciplined artist. Paige, a Baltimore native, as I mentioned, is a multidisciplinary artist who's critically acclaimed as a performer, director, choreographer, and playwright. She has nearly 20 years of experience in arts administration, creating new works, producing and performing. At Everyman, you've seen her on stage in Dot by Coleman Domingo and Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Earnest. Paige's direction's been seen throughout the country, including at Everyman, where she directed all three shows of the Queen's Girl trilogy by Colleen Sinnott Jennings, as well as David Auburn's Proof, which received critical acclaim from the Wall Street Journal. Paige has also been named a classroom hero by the Huffington Post, a Citizen Arts Fellow with the Kennedy Center, 40 Under 40 by the Washington Post, and one of 6 theater workers you should know by the American Theater magazine. Paige is a proud product of Baltimore City Public Schools and is the graduate of the Baltimore School for the Arts and the University of Maryland. Noah Himmelstein is a New York-based theater director while he's the associate artistic director at Everyman. He splits his time between New York City and Baltimore. At Everyman, he's directed Chelsea Mercantile's Everything is Wonderful, Karen Hartzman's The Book of Joseph, Michael John LaCusa and Ellen Fitzhugh's Los Otros, and J.B. Priestley's The Inspector Calls. He's also directed Andrew Lippa's I Am Ann Hutchinson at Strathmore with Kristen Chenoweth, and I Am Harvey Milk at Lincoln Center, Strathmore, San Francisco, LA, and Denver. In addition, he's directed for the New York Philharmonic and Lincoln Center of American Songbook. His assistant director credits include productions on Broadway and off with directors Bartlett Sher and James Lapine. Noah is a graduate of Emerson College. Noah and Paige, please join us. I'd love to introduce to you the artistic team at Everyman. Having lunch together. Yay!
This is so fun. Welcome to the kitchen table.
Hooray!
Hey, you guys, I thought it would be great this time if you guys interviewed each other. I think that might be kind of fun from your own perspectives, asking each other some questions and let us learn from you about you.
That sounds good. Thank you, Vinny.
Thanks, Vinny. See you later.
Hello, everyone. We are so glad that you are joining us for the very first Kitchen Table series. We hope that we bring a little bit of joy into your homes during what is no doubt a very strange and interesting time. but we hope that this gives a great distraction and you get to learn a little more about us. So my name is Paige Hernandez. My pronouns are she, her, hers. Noah, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Yes, Noah Himmelstein. Pronouns are he, his, him. And thrilling that we are the Associate Artistic Directors at Everyman.
Yeah, we have something pretty unique going on here. I think Vinny may have mentioned this, but we may be the only duo of Associate Artistic Directors, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and as Vinny mentioned, it's so fantastic that we are encouraged to go out, make connections throughout the field, around the country, work everywhere, whenever we can, and bring all of that love back to Everyman.
Yeah.
So it's really a robust and vibrant department we have.
Yeah, this trio is very exciting of artistic directors. And we have so much in common and very distinct differences, which is what I want to dig into now.
Great.
So one of the things that you and I have in common, Noah, is that we both attended performing arts high schools where the performing arts were central. I went to the Baltimore School for the Arts, but you went to Carver. I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your experience there and how it planted the seed for what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I was so fortunate to be an arts kid and to have a fantastic high school in my county to go to. And at Carver, I studied theater and had some of my first experiences at Everyman. You know, I went to Center Stage, I went to the Mechanic, I went to the Lyric, but at Everyman, I got to, see fantastic drama and really influenced how I looked at theater and the kinds of work I was attracted to. And I feel so many young people don't get that support so early on. So right. I'm grateful about that and having Carver.
Yeah, and it ended up being a stepping stone into what you do now. Even though you and I are a part of a trio and a duo just between you and I of Associate Artistic Director, we have things that are differently distinct about our roles. So if you could talk a little bit about what's the same, what's different, what you bring to the table.
Yeah, so I began about 4 years ago, and I'm so proud that in the past couple of years, just our amount of new work that we're doing at Everyman has become so much more invigorating and robust, and we're doing a lot of commissions, so I'm so proud to be part of that and making connections with playwrights. I'm constantly meeting with directors and designers and trying to expand our tentacles and bring that all back to Everyman. And I'm also a liaison between all the different departments and trying to bring them closer to the playwrights that we have in the room, the actors that we have in the room, and sort of fusing the art with the admin side. So it's continually evolving. And speaking of evolving, tell me about your role.
Yeah. My role really looks at Everyman and its visibility on different scales, whether that is with the youth in Baltimore or whether that's through equity and accessibility, as well as in comparison to some of the fantastic theaters in the area. It's really cool to be able to have kind of two distinct roles and then merge them together like a transformer superpower, because we really are able to catch a lot of different things that we wouldn't necessarily see on our own or just in a kind of traditional partnership. So super excited to join and super excited to see what we do as we continue to collaborate.
Yeah, it was such a natural for us because you've been such a valued member of the resident company for several years, and you're so beloved on stage and off with our organization. So it's a no-brainer. And so all we're going to do together.
And you as well. And speaking of which, I'm going to take a moment to just fangirl a little bit, Noah, because your work is tremendous. Everyman patrons may remember your work from different shows like Los Otros or Book of Joseph. Everything is Wonderful, the Salon series, which I get to be a part of, and so much more. Talk to me a little bit about what's been a driving force behind connecting you to new work at Everyman.
Yeah, thank you for asking, and thank you for those comments. I'm so proud of those pieces as well. Someone recently asked me, what is the sort of driving force and the underlying thing between all of your work? And kind of looking at a collection of it, I think it's about longing for transcendence, whether it was the interdisciplinary large-scale opera I Am Harvey Milk, which I've been able to do all over the country, which is about the LGBT community, to Everything is Wonderful, which you mentioned, this beautiful new play about faith and isolation and addiction and forgiveness, and how we get into a rehearsal room and as an ensemble dig deeper and deeper through those emotional, religious, social, political underpinnings. And especially now, I feel like we are all longing for peace and connection and some unity underneath this just horrific division. And so I'm so moved by the writers who are working today who are tackling these issues and making them theater. And to do that at Everyman, where you have an audience, sort of almost a set audience that who have a collective memory, who are bringing their experiences of what they saw you do, what they saw I do. We can build those conversations together. And as fantastic as the canon is, and we'll always go back to those classic works, doing those new pieces like the Book of Joseph and Los Otros is kind of where it's at for me.
Yeah, and you're such an expert at it. I mean, I feel like I go to see one of your shows and you are able to uplift that artist, that work, this very new story to the audience in a way that I just think is spectacular. I mean, I'm thinking of Everything is Wonderful and just the final moments. I really hope that folk can be able to experience your work in the near future and what you're able to bring. It's such a very clear and distinct eye.
Thank you. And I think, and I feel this for sure in your work too, if we charge the environment enough, then we can get the audience in a place where they're breathing together, and we can wedge our message in the cracks. And they can hear it in a way that they couldn't have on the news or reading it in the newspaper or with a friend. You just sort of break down those molecules so that we can build them back up together. And that's why I'm in the theater and what I love most about going to the theater. And I can't wait for that moment next year.
Yeah, and we're getting tremendous love on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you all so much for joining in. Sarah Roberts says, when I think of Everything is Wonderful, my eyes well up with tears and I get chills. It's such a special play, and Noah's production is astounding.
Thank
and
you.
Yes, friends, if you have other memories, please drop them in the chat. We would love to hear them.
Thank you.
Yes.
Doing this new work at Everyman and all the commissions we have in the pipeline, which we'll talk about another time. Just the future for new work is super exciting at Everyman.
Yeah. And everyone can find out more information about Noah at his website. We'll be sure to post it down below and be sure to check it out.
Thank you. Tell me now, enough about me, Paige. Tell me about School for the Arts. Tell me about when you got the bug. How'd you get here?
Yeah, Baltimore has everything to do with how I got here. And I'm very thankful and grateful because it is the backbone of the stories that I continue to tell, as well as the community that I like to represent. I never thought I'd be such a cheerleader for Baltimore because I've had such a very varied experience there. But the older I get, the more I realize it's instilled so much wisdom into me. So I'll say that first and foremost, because I feel like I got the bug just from being in communities and in the neighborhood and seeing different walks of life and being able to hear different stories and just getting fascinated with storytelling in that moment. And then from there, I was really loud in dramatic reading contests and oratory competitions, forensics, debate, which led to someone saying, you need to try theater on. My first exposure to theater was with the Arena Players in Baltimore. They told me to try out for the Twigs program, which is an after-school program that the Baltimore School for the Arts has in order to just really expose students to the arts, but also to encourage them to audition. And then I auditioned for the School for the Arts and I got in and was able to study theater. And really, it's been the backbone of my career. The skills that you take on at Baltimore School for the Arts, it's unprecedented in that it really is conservatory training at a very young age. 4 hours of intense theatrical training, and then 4 hours of academics. It really is rigorous. And from there was able to go to University of Maryland College Park. So the arts have been there. I'd like to think from the beginning, but officially since middle school. And, it means so much to me to be able to continue to implement education into theater for that same reason, because it gave me that access and exposure. I want nothing more than to be able to give it back.
Amazing. Amazing. I'm always inspired talking to you. You are a force of nature. Speaking of education, we had the opportunity to work together on a directing opportunity just recently with the Baltimore Office of Equity and Civil Rights. It was kind of our first sort of dive in a huge virtual way. What were some takeaways for that for you?
Yeah, a fantastic partnership. I want to give hats off to Brianna McCoy and Jenna Stiles, who are part of the education department at Everyman Theater, for being able to secure a partnership with that office as well as the Maryland Film Festival, where we could really see a way where theater and technology and Baltimore stories could combine into what felt like a very meaningful and impactful evening of theater and civic discourse. Really the stuff dreams are made of. I mean, when you can think of an intersection that works that well, I think we were able to achieve it. And then we were able to commission fantastic playwrights, Colleen Sinnette Jennings, Angelica Cherie, Baltimore's own Lady Dana Didi, to write these actual stories and then have some of our company members perform it, including those who are watching now, like Bruce Nelson and Dawn Ursula. Jefferson Russell was a part of that. A brand new company member, Felicia Curry. It really was like all the things.
Yeah. What I loved about that just being part of it, and thank you so much for bringing me to be part of that with you. It did all of the things that you talk about in terms of upbringing, about fusing education and community engagement and great writing and new work and connecting with the community. And it really kind of pointed a light just for me about how to move forward and how to just galvanize people and put the issues out there and do it in the most artistic way possible. So I just thank you for leading the brigade on that.
Yes. And I also want to give a shout out to, again, we were really all hands on deck for that experience. So it was a great trial by fire to figure out what it looks like moving forward with very intentional digital programming. We even had, specialty cocktails designed by Corey. Corey, I believe, is in the chat and is watching too. So there were a lot of things that went into it to make sure it was a really well-rounded experience.
Yeah. So you mentioned Angelica Cherie, who's one of my favorite new playwrights and just people. I'm so excited that we're going to get to see her play next season. But we also have a play next season, which you have had the pleasure of directing her whole trilogy. I think the Queen's Girl trilogy is unprecedented in the American theater. And I know it's going to be done all over the world once we let it fly. But tell me about being at the center of that and what that was like and continues to be.
Yeah, I always joke around with you and with Vinny that we don't give ourselves enough credit for how just fantastic and unprecedented the Queen's Girl trilogy is. It is a series of 3 solo performances based on the true life stories of its playwright, Colleen Sinnette Jennings. It features 3 of the most fantastic actresses I've ever worked with in my career: Dawn Ursula, Erica Rose, and Felicia Curry. And essentially we get to follow our heroine, Jacqueline Marie Butler, from adolescence all the way into womanhood. So we start in Harlem, where she's neighbors, or where she goes to school in Harlem, but where she's from Queens, because she's a Queens girl, of course, where she's neighbors with Malcolm X, into moving to Nigeria after the civil unrest of the civil rights movement. And that brings her all the way back to Vermont and Bennington. And it's just like, Colleen's story is so epic. And it's a story that is central to a woman of color who's going through moments of adversity, like we all are in this current moment, and how she triumphs and how she grows and what she learns from it and how she's able to apply it. And Colleen is, I see so much of myself in Colleen. I hope she thinks the same about me. She's also just a tremendous force and an educator and a historian. And we are just so grateful and thankful to be able to put on her trilogy of solo shows.
I love that cross-generational relationship you have, just again, as a fly on the wall. She's a boomer, you're much younger, and just where you guys meet and how you lift these stories is so thrilling, and how different these 3 actors are and how different the experience is. Even though they're playing one character, they're bringing so much of their their own versatility to that. So I can't wait for our audiences to get to see that again. And some people got to see it before we had to stop, but
yeah, we want nothing more than to be able to start back up again and start by diving right back into that series.
yeah.
So many folk want to know what happens to Jacqueline Marie Butler, and you know, we're thrilled that we can bring that back.
Yeah, and it's just so much fun. I mean, the music from that time period is extraordinary. So
yeah.
So should we bring Vinny back in?
Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah.
Hey, that was such an awesome conversation. I was there eating my sandwich, listening to you going. So much fun. Listen, let me ask you something. What do you miss most? What are you looking forward to most about getting back to making theater?
I mean, so many things. I mean, I think we've realized more than ever in this time how deeply essential it is to our lives. It's not just a fun thing we get to do on Saturday nights. I'm excited about our season. Personally, I'm excited about the Book of Joseph, which we talked about a little bit before, that I'm going to be directing that in New York as soon as we can with COVID, and also directing Los Otros, the New York premiere of that off Broadway next season. So that's pretty thrilling. Paige, what about you? What are you excited about?
Yeah, I think I may have mentioned this in the season announcement, so I hope I don't sound too much like a broken record, but I am super excited about the accessibility of this. Really finding a lemon in all of this, but making lemonade, which means that we've really thought long and hard about how to make this process as accessible and as safe for everyone so that they can continue to enjoy, you know, our great stories told well.
Well, you know, one of the things that the great discoveries, I feel like that, in a way, the pandemic has caught us and taught us is if we do programs digitally, we can get into more people's lives. We can reach out to a broad spectrum of people. You know, the only downside to live theater is that it requires that everybody be in the same location at the same time and be able to afford the ticket price to be able to come in. And for a theater that's called Everyman Theater, the more we can do to knock down those barriers and reach out to people where they live, literally at a price point that they can afford, the closer to free, the better, the bigger community we can connect with. And I kind of love that. And a big discovery I've had recently is that I think when we get back to theater making, it's clear that the digital component is always going to be there to complement the live theater experience. There is magic that happens when we all come together and breathe as one and experience that community. But there's also magic that can happen on screens and in people's televisions and on their handheld devices halfway across the world. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. Listen, it's time that we start to wrap up. I want you to know that the next Kitchen Table episode is going to happen next week on October 1st at noon. So get your salads, make your sandwich, roast your pork chop, whatever you have for lunch, bring it to your computer and talk to us while you do it. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.